the latest demographic forecast by a government think tank that Japan's population will decline by 1/3 in the coming 50 years points to mounting policy challenges ranging from reduction of the workforce to sustainability of the social security system. Steady and persistent efforts are needed to slow and hopefully reverse the demographic trend, but we Japanese also must explore how we can live with the rapidly shrinking and graying population. According to the National Institute of Population and Social Security Research, which every 5 years releases long-term demographic estimates up to 50 years in the future, Japan's population in 2065 will be 88.08 million, which is a roughly 30% drop from the 127 million people living in Japan in 2015. That will be equivalent to losing an average of 780,000 people every year. The population will not just shrink, but will be much grayer. People 65 or older will account for an estimated 38.4% of the total population, up sharply from 26.6% in 2015. There were 2.1 people in the 20 to 64 age bracket for every one person in the elderly ranks in 2015. 50 years from now, that ratio will be 1.2 to 1. That is a frightening prospect for the social security system, in which welfare programs for retirees are sustained by premium payments from the working population. That Japan had 9 working age adults for each elderly person in 1965 helps to explain the radical changes in population structure. Indeed, the estimates released last week predict that the population decline will slow down a little compared with the previous forecast. The think tank projected the fertility rate in 2065 to be 1.44 compared with 1.35, which was the estimate made 5 years ago for 2060. Japan's population is now projected to dip below 100 million in 2053 instead of 2048 in the 2012 forecast. That, however, does not mean significant changes in the long-term trend of population decline and aging. The nation's population started to decrease after peaking in 2008. The population in 2016 declined by a record 1,834 from the previous year for the 7th annual decrease in a row. The number of newborns last year is estimated to have dipped below 1 million for the first time since the government began gathering such statistics in 1899. That is far below the peak of 2.69 million in 1949. The fertility rate, which is the estimated number of babies born to an average woman in her lifetime, has been inching up since bottoming out at 1.26 in 2005 to reach 1.45 in 2015, but is still far below 2.07, the level deemed necessary to sustain the population. And despite the slow recovery in the fertility rate, the downward trend in the number of newborns is expected to continue given that the number of women in their 20s and 30s, the main childbearing period, has already dwindled. Alarmed by the rapidly graying and falling population, the Abe administration in 2014 set a goal of maintaining a population of 100 million in 2060, which officials say will be achievable if the administration meets its target of bringing the fertility rate up to 1.8 by the mid-2020s. The government has announced policy steps to support child rearing by working mothers. It is believed that such steps encouraged more women in their 30s and 40s to have babies, contributing to the increase in fertility rates. The latest estimates, however, emphasizes the fact that these efforts may slow down but will not reverse the demographic trend. To restore the fertility rates and slow the population decline, measures should continue to be explored to fight problems that discourage the younger generation from marrying and having children, including insecurity over jobs, financial concerns over having a family, or insufficient public support for child rearing. At the same time, the government must not shrink from these stark demographic prospects. It must come up with a plan that copes with the shrinking and aging population and start building a public consensus on the best way forward. It cannot avoid such efforts by merely setting out an ambitious population goal. A fundamental overhaul of the pension system, medical services, and nursing care programs will be inevitable in order to rebalance the benefits to retirees and the burden on the working age generation. Wealthy retirees will need to be asked to bear an increased share of the cost or face reduced benefits. The demographic estimate shows that the productive age population between 15 and 64 in 2065 will have fallen 41% from 2015, which is much faster than the decline of the total population. Both in order to secure manpower and contain rising medical and nursing care expenses, efforts will need to be made to help more people 65 or older stay fit and remain in the workforce. An economy that experiences a 30% population decline cannot be sustained by the same way it was in the past. Along with the problem of the shrinking manpower supply, consumer spending, which today amounts for 60% of the gross domestic product, GDP, will obviously dwindle. Whether immigration can be a solution for sustaining the economy should be publicly discussed. A steep population decline and aging as projected in the estimate is already a serious problem in rural Japan, where the population exodus to big metropolitan areas like Tokyo threatens the survival of local communities and the maintenance of basic services. In fact, the Abe administration's regional revitalization bid to reverse the population shift makes sense as a partial solution to the nation's population woes. That is because the exodus to Tokyo, where the cost of living is high and the fertility rate is the lowest among the nation's 47 prefectures, worsens the situation. The problem is that the administration's initiatives seem to be making little progress, and the concentration of people and resources in the capital continues undiminished. The government needs to redouble its efforts in this area.